all things Aussie hoops and NBL Fantasy. 3 blokes catching up over a can of 3. So many things that we cannot wait to see. As McDowell got the keys, will Suarez be raining 3s? After Brisbane said no Franks, the 36ers said yes please. They chose a second serve of Randall as United win a sweep. We think Walton's hard to handle. If Doyle rules, they're hard to beat. We love some Tucker. Wardenberger's got the lot. There's no cheese, but there's big sauce, and now Bangers gets the shot. Can a mango pick and roll fill the gorge-sized hole? Or do they need a lift breeder to restore their heart and soul? The Kings can focus on the books, so long as their man Xavier cooks. Will there be Magnay regret? Does R. Kelly fly with Majet? Will Thomas be a tank with Manic and LT? And I do beg your pardon, but we rather like Brad Lee. Cleveland, this is for you! We want more of the same from 22.
G'day listeners, you're back with Benny, Banksy and Brody, the basketball bloke stripping all things Aussie hoops and NBL Fantasy.
Oh, Brody, no wonder you're sick, mate.
You sound fully sick, bro.
How's my fantasy
very husky
voice going?
Call me now.
Call me now. Love some dedications. To be honest, Brody, though, I'm not surprised you're sick. I would be sick too, having listened to the podcast, to the press conference, should I say, that we heard through the week, where a particular coach threw part of his team under the bus. Obviously, if you haven't heard that, we have that here for you now.
Hi, Banksy. Thanks very much for coming forward to this joint press conference today. How are you feeling?
Very good, very good.
How did you go last round compared to the other blokes?
The highest score of the round last week.
How would you describe the other blokes' performance?
Sorry, boys, but just the basket case at the moment.
I can see that you have Dean here as a consultant who has been conducting a review. Dean, if you don't mind sharing, have you considered replacing the other blokes?
Yeah. I've been open. We're searching for a guy. We haven't found the right guy yet.
Banksy, are you at all worried about replacing the blokes with better fantasy coaches who might take some of your limelight?
I think that's going to take some time for them to gel.
So to clarify, what are your feelings towards the other blokes?
Time for them to get going.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Thrown under the bus. Banksy, look.
I mean, in the video, his head looks huge because he's extreme close-up, but now we know his head is actually huge.
He is zoomed in. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see Bordy really, really under the weather. But what do you got to say for yourself, Banksy?
That was news to me. That was some very good editing, Benny. Very impressed and pretty on point. Pretty accurate.
No, look, it was. I was just going to bring that up because you said Southeast Melbourne Phoenix were basically a shit show, but our team won 2 games this week, and your team's absolute shambles. So
tables have turned.
The tables have turned, but as what happens now is that we get questions on the Discord chat. Love our Patreon supporters. You should sign up. You still can. But we got a question from Brad Macca-Boydie. Do your best, mate, in reading out Brad Macca's question. Of course, it's for Banksy. No one wants to talk to us.
What is the difference between a good fantasy coach and a great fantasy coach? Or what does Banksy do really well that others don't? Captain choices, start sits, planning schedule, monitoring team value, ability to assess relevant fantasy talent by eye, watching lots of games, heavy on analytics, drives a DeLorean. Maybe rank me above and lend any additional information so we can all have a fighting chance here. You don't have a DeLorean.
Wow. There's a lot to take on there.
To be honest, I've known you for a long time. You're not the greatest driver I know, so
no,
I wouldn't say that's got anything to do with it.
No. You can rule that out safely.
The eye test, it was always the baller rating.
The baller rating is very big. Very big.
I had an eye test for you on the weekend, but you weren't there. I can't remember what it was now.
We're talking about basketballers, not ladies, mate.
No, it was an eye test on basketball.
Banksy, what have you got to add to respond to what makes you a good, not great fantasy coach? Great, not good, sorry.
Well, we all know in the first, we're in our 5th year now. So in the first 3 seasons, I was horrendous. Let's be honest. If you're going to judge it by ranking, I know you guys were very heavy on the spreadsheets and your planning to make sure you maximise the doubles, and it just wasn't something that I really did in the first 3 years. And I learnt the hard way. And last season essentially was the first season that I took it seriously in terms of planning with a spreadsheet, and obviously finished 8th last year and up there again this year. So I think the spreadsheet is the number one thing I learnt. Really plan ahead. I don't plan through the whole season. At the moment, my spreadsheet is probably only running 4, maybe 5 rounds ahead of time. I don't think there's any point in sort of looking longer term than that. 4 weeks ahead. 4 weeks ahead, because things change, don't they? So, but look, I don't think we can underestimate the luck factor. I was up there, obviously, last season and first for quite a period of time, but luck hit me in a bad way. I remember I brought in Yanni, planning ahead of time, a week before we really needed to get him in our teams, and he didn't play those following couple of weeks. So that's where my fall down was, and lost my number 1 spot because of that bad luck. And this season it's been the opposite. As we know, I had planned on bringing Barry Brown into my team. I was short, I think, 0.01 of that trade, and ended up as a result having to bring Randall in. I didn't think Randall was a bad trade in, but it could have easily gone the other way. And if I'd brought Brown in, I probably wouldn't be first now. So we can't underestimate, yes, there's an absolute luck factor, but you've got to combine that with your planning and following the schedule closely as well.
Yeah, I know Banksy...
plan, I guess, they always say.
Yeah, Banksy last season actually had the benefit of being the number 1 point scorer, and at the same time he had the greatest team value of anyone in the competition. So this season, again, I know his team value is quite nice. He's not quite to that point, but I felt last year that he didn't zoom out far enough, that when he was up there, there was one particular week where he did the 1 week rental just for a little bit of a schedule boost, rather than looking sort of longer term, and it might have hurt him because he didn't force in your trades. But we're all going to make mistakes. Mine came very early with a Madronya and Lockie Dent decision that's cost me big time.
That was a bench one. That wasn't Fisher and Thomas.
Yeah, well, that was very unlucky. But yeah, I think Banksy has as well chosen the correct stacks. He went with the 4 Jack Jumpers, and the 4 of them were good. And he's gone into the 3 Sydney stack. And Sydney are scoring far more fantasy points than any other team right now. So they could actually afford to cater for 3 or 4 relevant fantasy teams. And New Zealand, which is the stack that I went with and continue to roll with United, not as good. So luck in that sense, as well as picking the right stack at the start of the year, definitely contributed to it. So good on you, Banksy. I'm sure we'll get more questions specifically for you later on, but let's get on to the fantasy news.
NBL Fantasy News.
The Civ is in the system. Peyton Seaver is $1 million price, point guard position, and he was expected to potentially play this upcoming game on the 27th. And we got our first question, Boydie, coming through from Wolski.
Yeah, Wolski, with the arrival of Seaver, should we be cashing out on Dent or hold for one more week?
I'd like to add to that. I'm a Madronya holder. He has to go.
Yeah, Madronya,
Absolutely.
I think, has to go. The difference between the two is Lockie Dent played the second most minutes for the Hawks last night, and even he played the second most minutes for the Hawks on their previous game as well against NZ.
He might play more than Seaver this week. He might
play more than Seaver still. I think he
went up another 100k as well.
Minutes. Pardon me?
Went up another 100k.
He did.
On the double.
He's less likely to lose minutes compared to Madronya and Davo. He's played the last couple of games as well, 6 minutes apiece. So I think those two are probably more likely to lose minutes to begin with, and then maybe Lockie will. So you might start coming down a little bit, but I mean, he's still putting decent scores up for his price, isn't he? He's had a 29 and 26 over his last 2 games. So
yep.
If he's just your benchy, I think you can hold off for another week.
He's probably getting 40k again. Who knows? So
So I'd be holding on to him if you can, if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you've got the luxury trade out, then and you've got the money, then why not do something? But if you need to hold him for another week and you've got 2 other players you would need to get out of or whatever, then so be it.
That's it, unless you've got an anti-redhead policy like I do in my team. Now, we got news of the World Cup qualifier teams come through, and there's a lot of NBL names in that. To save, hopefully, a barrage of questions that we get, the NBL is not playing that week. So do not be concerned. We get to watch the NBL qualifiers. They're only going to win 1 more game to qualify for the big tournament. So get behind the Boomers boys and hope they don't get injured for our fantasy teams on the way back. But
the interesting
that's 2 rounds away. Two more rounds of NBL
so
before we get a break.
That's right. It's after Cup. Well, it's the week after Cup week, basically.
Which I've just learnt myself.
Yep.
We get a bye.
We do get
fantasy.
So
2 weeks of trade planning.
2 weeks after. That's right. We get a bye. The side's interesting. There seems to be a lot of bigs for mine that are the NBL guys, and then less so much. I know DJ 3J Vasiljevic from Sydney is one of the guards, but I can't remember that off the top of my head. But it seemed like there was a lot of bigs. But yeah.
Beautiful. Now, you're probably going to appear on this next list, Doctor.
The injury report with Dr. Boyd.
Yes, and as we've already heard, the doctor is still no good. I don't know, what is it, 3 weeks after? Oh, God, that sounds delicious.
Can't mix with medication, unfortunately, mate.
No, I'm trying to stay away. After getting COVID, I seem to have just gotten smashed with some sort of sinusy chest thing that the quacker's got me on about 15 different. The other quacker's got me on about 15 different things, but that's okay. Barry Brown Jr. returned over the weekend, as did Sean Thomas. Harrison's come in and playing minutes in that big jam-pack roster in Brisbane. Gary Brown returned for Sem and looked quite good, and Sam McDaniel returned for the Jack Jumpers.
Few names there.
More names there. Well, biggest interesting one for me is Gary Brown came in. I think he had 9 assists in his first game, 11 in the second game, just shy of a double-double with points. Looks like he's going to be a very good facilitator. Needs to kick up a scoring to make it maybe a double-double threat, but he still had a 56, I think it was, in that second game. So
very tasty.
Was against Brisbane, though, so a bit of a kicker there. No injuries. Devondrick Walker has done his back. He was a game-time decision, we were told, after the fact. And I don't think he played, or did he play a couple of minutes in the end in that game?
No minutes.
No minutes at all, that's right. So one to keep watch there. I don't think he's very highly owned, and I'm not too sure anyone's too interested in grabbing him in, but anyway. Magnay and Steindl are back playing 5-on-5 basketball at training, hopefully 2 or 3 weeks away. So I would say that's maybe after the bye round, maybe they would look to come in. Again, not too sure how many JJs are in lineups at the moment, but that's one to keep an eye on there once they both return.
Big Will Magnay come to ruin Banksy's season again.
Failing to plan is planning to fail. It's time for the schedulizer.
All right, now as we enter round 5 already, Adelaide with the best short-term schedule. They've got the 3 straight doubles, obviously along with United. But it's the 6 doubles over the next 7 and 10 doubles over the next 12. Obviously makes them almost a set-and-forget trade-in target from here. Should be on your radar, if not now, in the short term. United have 7 over the next 8. They continue their busy schedule that we're already aware of. The Breakers have another 4 doubles over the next 5, but I think you just have to about pay me to trade them in, looking at their fantasy output from last game. What did they score? 5 actual points in a quarter?
Stop right there. If you were a real friend, you would be bringing in Brantley this week. You didn't have Tucker for the whole season. He was your favourite player. He was locked in your team for the whole season. You bring him in last week, back-to-back double-doubles. Come on, man. Jarrell Brantley. Cheap as anything. Great schedule. Do it for us, please.
It's starting to look a bit dodgy, isn't it? Just XRM and Tucker. Anyway, most relevant change in the schedule, aside from obviously Adelaide's doubles kicking off, is Perth. They're starting back-to-back doubles, and considering they've got 2 of the 4 highest averaging players that are actually on doubles this week, they're going to be pretty relevant. I guess aside from that, looking at the schedule, it's basically fade and trade for our Kings, which I've got a stack of, and the Taipans, both starting a string of singles.
Thank you very much, and that, of course, is going to be a massive line of questioning when I find the button.
Need an adjudication on who to trade in this week? How about a ruling on who to sit or start? Let's see who submitted their case for judgment in the Fantasy Full Court.
Alright, first off, we've got one from Bucks, who's conveniently asking questions about Bucks. Who are the best cash cows right now, regardless of their price, boys? Blokes, who are you chasing?
There's a few different categories, I reckon, of ways to talk about this when this question got posed. So cash cows, we normally think of the cheaper ones to start off. Obviously, it's regardless of price now, but Wardenberg, Lowe, Brisbane player DJ Mitchell, all have defined roles in their teams and continue to make money. So I think I like those 3 guys. There's obviously the new $1 million guys. So we've had Gary Brown last week. We're going to have the likes of Peyton Seaver. We've got Trey Cowell come back. They're another category that I'll be looking at. But I'm massively looking at some of these cash fouls, which are the ones that have essentially tanked in value for some variety of reasons. So these are the ones that I'll be looking to get on and try and timing it. But these are the likes of Tashawn Thomas, Trey Cowell, even like down to 900k now, is a candidate for me. But yeah, those type of guys are still good. And then Banksy, probably still a few big dogs making money as well, I'm guessing. And
like you say, with targeting these cash fouls, I mean, that's essentially what I did with Tucker. I got him at a discount, not trying to rub it in. You just mentioned some of those guys like Brown that are already 1.0 mil. Ray John Tucker's 1.03 mil, and he's just gone up 100k. I think he's got at least another 2 to 3 weeks of steady increase with him in price, without even having to set the world on fire. So he was almost 900k last week. Baines, another classic example.
Yeah. Barry Brown Jr., these guys, I think, that can fantasy. There is some signs that may have got up to slow starts for some reason. They, the cash cows I've been looking at to get these Maduts and Aqueras and the like that you have on your bench up to these guys that have some potential of growth from there. You got anything else to add, Boydo?
I think you're kind of spot on with all those.
Oh, thank you, mate.
We're
going to make you read them all out. That's a joke move of us, aren't we?
Nick Turner's at Adelaide, getting in early, which I'm sure will be a popular question. Best Adelaide options ranked from 1 to 4 out of Cleveland, Franks, McCarron, and completely Randall.
It's pretty clear for me. If you're going to rank them, it can't just be output, it's got to be value as well. I think Randall out of those 4 is the clear standout value. He's not just putting up the scores. We saw he can pad the other stats with some good rebounding and assist numbers last game. Hopefully we see more of that going forward. For me, the next one there, we haven't totally seen the output from last season just yet, but Franks, he had a couple of games back, he had the 9 rebounds, so he's not that far off. And I guess the reason I've got Cleveland at 3 is we did find out, someone posted in the Discord chat a little bit of an interview after the game, that he was playing under an injury cloud last week, or he was injured all week during training. Is that correct? Something along those lines.
Yes, you're throwing people off the scent.
Am I? Okay. And
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Well, I did see that.
I think he was. I think the other coach even talked about it in the post game.
Yep. CJ.
So there's got to be a red flag there. And Macca just hasn't set the world on fire like Frank's, but I think the flag for me with McCarron is I thought of him at the start of the season as potentially increasing his fantasy output because he's now surrounded by a better scoring squad, and the assist numbers just have not been there.
Randall's been the playmaker as much as Macca has.
So I think Randall's actually decreased McCarron's fantasy value from what I've seen more recently. So
yeah,
bit of a flag there as well. So for me, it's Randall, absolute standout out of those four. Frank's Cleveland, although I think Cleveland will rise as the season goes on. We know that he's very fantasy relevant, but the injury flag just is there, and then Macca's just fallen off my fantasy radar at the moment.
Yeah, kind of feel, I reckon, Randall, then a big gap is probably the way to put it. Dual eligibility as well comes in extra
Very.
How do you feel, Boyd?
Yeah.
About these players, not just how's your illness?
I think Randall is. I like Randall.
Cool.
I've had him in my side for a couple of weeks. Did he go up again? Not much, if anything.
Oh,
He
yeah.
went up 82k, pumped up. I think he's almost at his price. He'd be almost the one I'd be getting first, and then maybe Frank's, but he's so expensive. Yeah.
The problem is Franks and Cleveland are still decreasing in price as well.
They are. Yep.
And I know that if you're trading some of these guys in, it's going to be for the long haul, as I mentioned, because of their schedule. They can almost be set and forget, so you maybe don't have to worry about that with increasing in price, but it's the outlay initially when you're going to have people and coaches that are going to be able to bring these guys in 2 or 3 weeks at a discounted price to what you're paying up now.
Yep. It's almost like
Beautiful.
you're kind of
You like
guessing game
Randall.
as to where you get up to. Whereas Randall's going to keep going up. You think he's at a 43 and a 54 in his last 2 games. You think he's still going to keep you making your money. So I think he would be the one I would be bringing in first if I could. But I already have him.
Yeah, well, that makes a tough decision, I guess. The next question, bold move, Cotton. Randall versus Cotton, only looking at the next 2 weeks. So I think, personally for me, it's still Randall. I think as long as you have another captain option over the next 2 weeks that you're content with, that's kind of where my thinking is. But I think Randall is must own. I know you say it's only for the next 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks' time, you still get to keep Randall. There's no need to get rid of him, so that also factors into it. For me, I just think he's probably the better option at the price point. And I don't think the price difference the scoring difference will be enough to justify paying up for Bryce head to head out of these two. Love you fellas' thoughts.
I totally agree. If you don't have either of those guys, I would be targeting Randall. So price versus value, it's got to be Randall because it's what you can do with that additional 500k that you're paying up for Cotton. I don't think Cotton's going to outscore him by that much to justify it, although it would look very good to have both of those guys in your team this week. But we know Randall is, with that schedule, I mean, yes, you're talking about the next 2 rounds, but he is set and forget. You bring him in, you can basically have him in there for the remainder of the season. It's not going to cost you another trade down the line.
I like it.
Excellent.
Pinder, trade or hold Pinder, and with the can schedule, is he to be avoided for non-owners? Interesting.
Did any of us do the Pinder selection last week?
I didn't, but I'm glad he didn't have a great second game, I'd say. I was a bit worried.
That second game was a bit of a red flag, wasn't it? He had 34 minutes as well.
13 rebounds?
Yeah.
13 rebounds. That was just an absolute blessing for non-owners.
It was.
This guy is going to... Yeah, look, it's strange because I'm about to say get rid of him, but he's going to outscore everyone else in the competition by 5 fantasy points a game, I think. But...
the one thing I looked at with this question I've got to highlight is before... If you just look at the averages of just the centres, and it's just... Now that Pinder has that centre eligibility, it's him and Daylight. 53 points a game. The next closest is 36.
Yep. Big jump.
It's a lot to sit on your pine, but like you still... 36, for example, if you've got a pardon, you probably still starting your Pardon over Pinder and a single in those weeks, potentially, I would think. That's the way I would go with those things. So why do you have Pinder if that's the case? Why is he sitting on your bench, and could that money be spent better elsewhere? It's a real tough one, but
I think the answer is if you've already got him, yes, it's what you could do with that extra cash. Just the reason I'm trading out Cooks this week. But Cairns only have 3 straight singles. If you're trading Pinder out, that's using up a trade now. You are going to need him for round 8. There's only Cairns and New Zealand on the double in round 8. You're going to need Pinder. Are you trading him back in 2 weeks? So I think
no.
No?
Jarrell Barrington, captain.
Wow. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You have to weigh up. You have to weigh it up.
But I think if you're a non-owner, then you're not bringing him in, obviously. But yeah, it's just a question of what you can do with that extra cash.
I think you got to play the sums game. You got to work out who's starting instead of him for you over the next couple of weeks while he's got singles. If you've got, Wurdenberger on the bench, then you're probably not going to be able to. But if you've got someone like Humph, or you've got someone like I don't know who, you have to play the numbers game and say, okay, it's 2 games from Humphreys this week going to be better than 1 game from Pinder and all that sort of stuff. Do the sums.
Interesting.
Yeah,
we do have a question about centres coming up, so maybe we're going to talk this out live on the pod. So let's see how this works out. But next question from Paddy and a few others, to be honest. It's all about today, Junior and Junior Madut. Paddy wants to know who is the best trade target to trade out for around $1 million. He's already got Beamer, Tucker, and Randall, so we're looking PG, SG options around $1 million. Who do we like, fellas, for Madut if we are making? Yep, so he's already
got Randall. Brown for me. That was someone I was hoping to upgrade Madut to after the numbers I saw on the weekend. Now, I don't know if we should talk about this now, Boydie, but we're talking about targets for Madut anyway, so let's touch on it. I did not see the Phoenix games as closely as I would have liked, but you can't help but notice those assist numbers for Brown and how that translates in the fantasy world. So give us the rundown. For those that didn't see the 2 Phoenix games, I believe you watched both. How do we see things with Brown? Is it sort of a blip, or is it something that looks like it can be constant from here?
I think I lost my voice. I can't go any further, guys.
No, you need to watch YouTube for that. That was some brilliant acting there.
I wasn't watching him as I asked, but I'm assuming this is one that Boyd likes to keep under the radar for himself.
No, he looks good. I've already slid him into my side a couple of times, I think, and as you mentioned, mate, he just looks like a facilitator. He had the 56 fantasy points in that second game, and that was in 26 minutes, which you think he's going to probably play 24, 26 minutes is what he's played over each game.
Was it a Brisbane factor?
Well, they played NZ over in NZ, who had a terrible game, and then Brisbane down here. Yes, the opponents could have been a factor, but he just looks like a step above for Phoenix rather than having Adnam running the point. I think Adnam's very much suited to that backup. He still had 23 and 41 over their 2 games over the round, Adnam, so still pretty good on a price per minute basis. But Brown just looked good. He's a facilitator. If his shot starts dropping, I think he'll score a little bit better as well. Obviously, that might take a little bit of touch, but he got some really good assists. Like, he just looked like a bit of a playmaker. I like it.
He finally closed out the game. He had some shock and turnovers in the blitz, to be honest, and
he still obviously had 3 each game. He lost
that's
6
a good
points
ratio.
each game. So
that's a fine ratio.
Yeah.
3-1.
Yeah.
Happy with that. So, I reckon he's good. What are your thoughts? You still like the other Brown? Kiwi Brown. What's his name?
Barry Brown Jr.
Barry Brown.
I'll get back to you. What are your thoughts on Bazza? Not Gaza.
I like that they put the ball in his hands a little bit. Like, what did he have in that? He had 26 in that game he returned for. which was in 29 minutes. So he played the second most minutes to Pardon, in that game against Cairns. So he's obviously going to get some minutes.
Was that the second game? That was the second game.
Yeah, I think McDowell Wright was still under the weather to a degree. And he did foul out. Remember, McDowell fouled out.
He fouled out in the last
Brantley fouled out as well. So that 29 minutes might be a bit of a jump, although he did play 36 and 30 in the only other two games he played in rounds 1 and 2. Don't mind
He's another
him.
one for me. Don't mind him. The other one is, so he's already got some SG options. So talk to me about Trey Cal. You got him in Bordy. Are you holding out hope for what Trey Cal can do?
Yeah, I am. He had 35 in that first game and then 21 in the second game against Brisbane. Obviously, he looked a lot better in that first game. Gave off a couple of assists. It looked like he can make plays as well as score. But I don't think
it's good size. But
I think he had 13 points in that first game and 5 assists. So did pretty well. Likes jacking up the 3. He's hit 2 in both games, but he's missed a few as well. So he's lost points for shooting. I don't know. I don't know.
I'll talk you through my trades right now.
Took him as a bit of a punt, and I'm not sure that punt. Geez, he's owned by, how many is he owned by? I think I might be one of 5 or something that own him.
Well, currently 6 based on my trades at the moment. So
there you go. I was one of 5 that owned him. So 56 round, which isn't rubbish, but it isn't great, is it, for $1 million player?
Yeah. So this is what I'm weighing up right at the moment. So I want to have enough money next week to get Aquera up to Sean Thomas from Perth, and that'll be essentially my bench upgraded to all playable players in my mind. To ensure that, I need to kind of go Cal over Brown. Otherwise, I'm holding Aquera for who knows how long. So I might have to take a punt on him and just hope that it works out. So I might be user number 6. Let's see how that works out. But anyway,
Aquera had the 28 last game.
I think he'll work into the game a little bit more as well. Cal, although he did play 27, 29 minutes in those last round, so been in there enough. But
it was horribly concerning looking at the live scoring on basketballblokes.com at the first game that South East Melbourne Phoenix played. And literally everyone had 30 points, it seemed like. It was crazy. It was the biggest sharing of the load that you'd ever see. Lots of 9 rebounds, 9 assists, no double-doubles. So that's the problem. We've gone from being a shambles, and now we're just too talented, unfortunately, Boydie.
Yep. But, in saying that, Brown has the ball in his hands more than Cal. Could make things happen a bit more. So it's a bit of I was a bit worried when that second game he was sort of standing around in the corner for the 3, waiting for the 3 a bit too long and that sort of stuff sometimes, which hurts.
It's players sitting in the corner, so that's a middle option if you do want to trade. But the question is, do we need to trade? Now, this is Banksy's dilemma at the moment. We've got 3 questions that have come through from Matty, Jacob and Bucks. So the gist of it's, what's more important, getting Kings players out or having guys like Madut in your lineup, getting rid of them? Jacob asked, with a lot of teams having 3 Kings, what order would you trade them out? And do you trade Madut this week? And Bucks at 450k, he likes his concentrate on the Bucks, isn't he? Is it worth prioritising trading out Madut so he doesn't lose the money that he's already made? So I'd like you to answer this, Banksy, if you could, because this is your scenario and we've had this exact conversation today.
It is, and when I logged in this morning when the game opened, I already had in mind the trades I wanted to make. So I've got Cooks, I've got the other 2 Kings in DeWalt and Simon as well. But always in my mind, the way I can improve my team longer term is to trade Cooks down to someone and use that cash to pop on top of Madut and upgrade him to someone that's actually playable on the court instead of rotting away on the bench. So my plan was to upgrade him from the Cooks money this week, but I had a bit of a chat with you off the pod as well, Benny, to sort of walk through which way to go as well. And I think you sort of opened my eyes a little wider to the fact that that's not necessarily the play. So let's use an example. Let's say I was able to actually squeeze in what I'd originally planned was to get him up to Brown with some dual position eligibility there. Let's just say I was able to do that. Brown scores 80 over his double, which is roughly what he averaged over his double last week. Let's say Madut, he's not getting those minutes. Let's say he scores 20 across his double. Brown scored the 80 across his double. The upgrade halved points on the bench is really only netting us an extra 30 points for the week. Then you look at the other side of the flip of the coin, the Kings trade. So if we go Cooks to Cotton, looking at the averages, gains you an extra 50 points on court with the extra game because Cotton's on the double. The other one, if you go Simons to Travers, Simon averaging 37, Travers averaging 43. That's an extra 49 points over the double. And on top of that, Travers' price is obviously trending up as well. Same with DeWalt. Look, if you're looking at, say, a DeWalt to Randall is another example people are looking at. If you're trading Kings out, it's gaining you more points on the court than the upgrade of Madut on the bench. And the prices of Travers and Randall are still trending up as well. So I think when you break down the numbers this week with what you've got available to bring in, I think it's not ideal, but Madut can wait a week if you're weighing up, well, what's going to net me more points? Because that's what wins this game is what's going to net me more points is the half points on the bench with the upgrade or trading these guys out, the Kings that are on singles, to guys that have good matchups on the double. And I think the answer looking at those examples are trading your on-court guys are going to net more points by average this week. And the only argument you would have to trade Madut up before you're trading your court guys up is cash, when people say cash is king. But if you're trading in guys like Travers and Randall, these guys are, as we know, we don't have those cash cows that we'd like at the bargain basement prices. So these are the guys that are actually increasing our team value anyway.
Times two if one of those on-court guys are your captain that you might potentially bring in. So got to factor that in also.
Yeah, the kicker there is, unless you've got someone on your bench, you can play as a starter and you can work it around so you can bring that person on. That was the only argument I'd have to that, what Banksy said there.
Yeah, you want to have good on-court coverage. Great point by Boydie. Like, if it's Madut and you need to get Madut to someone playable to fill in not this week but the following, for example, that could be the alternative. So, great point there, Boydie. Are we going to pick Mango? That's the question that's come in from Maddie. Is Mathiang potentially going to become fantasy relevant going forward? Boy, did you catch any Mango Mathiang?
I did.
Last round.
I did. What do you have? 36 in that game.
4 blocks.
5 blocks or something. 4
Yeah.
6. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so inflated by the stats that don't always happen, I guess is probably the way you'd say it. Look, I'd love to say yes, but I don't think you can at the moment. I mean, he only had 4 points and the 6 rebounds, which is nice, but the thing I did like there at the start, looked like at the start of the year they looked like they only ever had Froling or him on the court at once, but I did notice a little bit last night they had both of them on the court at the same time. So
that's what will change if he gets. That's the key for sure.
Correct. Don't mind that. And for the first time since the start of the season, he played more minutes than Deng Deng, who obviously is starting at that 4 spot for them too. So unless he gets a bit of a roll on and starts playing out and above what Deng Deng's bringing to them as a starter, and then Mathiang becomes a starter, then I think so. But he's getting cheaper by the week.
It's almost mango picking season, but not yet, I'd say.
Possibly.
All right, next question. The centre of excellence. And it's a great question by Dylan asking, who is the best centre option at present? And this goes back to our Pindo question. So let's weigh up the other targets, the other potential targets that Banksy raised before. So Banksy, who are we got in contention compared to Pinder?
Well, I've got, and it depends who you've already got, obviously. But if we bring up the centres and we just rank them by average points, you've got Pinder at almost 53 points per game, and then there's Daylight, and Parton currently is second with 36.5 points per game.
He's my first selection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, again, you've got to take into account the doubles. Okay, it's one thing to look at the averages, but we know it's a game we've got to follow the schedule with. So nothing wrong with Parton. Source is next with 34.3, but obviously we know there's the cheese factor. Although I didn't watch those games closely, Boyd, but it still seems that Source Williams is still getting, I guess, 3/4 of the minutes at the centre position. I don't feel it's eaten too much into his minutes. Not the last game anyway, is it?
9 boards.
Fair call.
Going at 1.5 fantasy points per minute. Still very, very good in that sense. But
at $1 million bucks.
I'd still have Parton over cheese so far, if that's what we're going with over the short term.
Yep,
personally.
that's fair.
Cheese,
And
you mean Sauce?
Sauce, thank you.
Sauce, yeah. The next one's the interesting one, right? So we said he's yet to fire, and that's Robert Franks. Although he hasn't done anything yet, I don't feel, from the Adelaide games I've watched, he's still the fourth or equal third by average fantasy scoring centre at the moment, with the schedule to come. The problem with Franks is, do you get him at his price tag of 1.47 million, or wait till he drops further yet again?
He's Pinder priced right now. So, you'd have Pinder over Franks almost right now, I would think, based on the trajectory of both players at the moment. So,
just that Franks has the schedule, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think at the moment is, do you think Franks is going to average more? Because if you do the numbers, so Adelaide and or New Zealand with Parton have 9 games over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, whereas Cairns have only got 6, let's say, right? I could extend that even out and it'd be totally different, but Adelaide's the same. Parton and Franks are averaging 34 over the last 3. Times that by 9, you're looking at 306 points. Pinder averaging 52 over his 6 games. That gives you 312. So he actually edges them by six fantasy points, believe it or not, even though he's playing 3 less games. But if you think that Franks is, or Parton, for that matter, are going to bump up a bit more, then, it might be worthwhile going one of those guys that you think so, even though, they're playing, maybe playing unders at the moment. But
the thing is always what you do with that extra cash. This might be a silly comparison, but Humphreys is averaging 29 points per game. Franks is averaging 34 points per game. One's priced at almost $1.5 million, and the other's priced at $797K.
Yep.
So are you paying that at the moment, depending on what you're doing with the rest of the cash there? Are you happy to pay an extra $700K for an extra 5 points a game? I want to see more for Franks. I want to see a double-double in there. I want to know that his price is going to turn around, ideally, before I bring him into my team.
I agree with that.
I'm content with Parton and Hump tomorrow at the moment
So
at their prices, and but if you already have Pinder, I think I'm swayed that if you can keep him without killing your team, that is definitely a viable option based on those numbers, thanks to the calculations from Boydie. Thank you, mate. Start sit questions to finish off, fellas. So we got questions from Banksy, Nathan, Marco, and Nick.
Banksy?
But we get,
what?
Yeah, we did get one from Banksy. So, but they combine into essentially 2 questions, which is a start sit. We'll stick them in order if we can, fellas. The bigs to start off with: Sauce, Hump, Parton, and Lowe. Banksy, what are your thoughts? How are you feeling about this at the moment? I know you asked the question.
Well, yeah, considering I asked the question, I'm not feeling great about it because I had to make the choice between Hump and Sauce last week. I think I'm leaning towards Hump. I'm not a low owner, so I am biased in that respect. But he always worries me with, can he keep those points per minute up with playing less minutes than some of these other guys? So that's why I discount that as an option.
Is Parton better than all of them, though?
Again, I'll probably get a little bit of bias, but probably. His minutes are up there. He doesn't seem to get... He has had some games where he's been in foul trouble that I've seen, where he's hit the 4 fouls, and he's stayed out there, and he's managed to be fantasy productive before getting that 5th foul. So he's managed to stay in the game even when he's been in fantasy trouble. And one problem I have being a Sauce and Hump owner is Hump has not. I think Vickerman even said they had planned to play Hump 28 minutes last game, which is music to my ears, knowing that they want to play Hump these minutes. That's always been the problem in the back of my mind, is are they prepared to give Hump these minutes to be fantasy relevant? And it sounds like they are, but we saw the 2 games on the weekend for United that Hump was in foul trouble again, got the 3 fouls very early in the game, and then he sort of, when he was back in the game, we didn't see him as active. I mean, in that last game, he was, I think, had the 8 points really quickly on the offensive end, and then as soon as he got in that foul trouble, he just didn't exist out there. And that's where his fantasy score just doesn't go anywhere. So maybe the matchup this week, we'll see Hump in a better position. We've obviously got to take into account the opponents. So Melbourne United have the Hawks. That should be, you would think, a juicy matchup for any Melbourne United player that you do.
So what Bangers did.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I'm probably going to back Hump in to score better this week, and knowing he doesn't have to contend with Cheese as his backup. And they've got Perth as well. Now, we know that Perth, TT's back now, I think, but I don't think he played all that amount of minutes last game, so they're a bit undersized at that position as well. So I think Hump's definitely got a... Oh, there you go. So I think that was his double-double, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, so I think those matchups are a bit juicier this week for Hump if he can just stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, Pardon plays Tassie JJs, which is always a bit of a red flag
absolute
for fantasy
flag.
scores.
And Adelaide.
I can't help but feel they're going to score. Pardon, Hump, and Sauce will score very similarly, and I think that Bo will probably be the 4th. What are you at, Bordy? Who would you start out of those? Is we going to have Pardon over Sauce, Pardon over Hump? How are you looking?
Pardon over Hump.
Yeah.
Even though he's about to get jackied?
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm not too sure. Not too sure if I have the faith in Hump yet.
And I have a real feeling, I think that if Adelaide turn up in Adelaide, that could almost be a blowout. I've just got a gut feeling.
Yes.
Oh, dear. Look, a 28-minute Hump sounds very good. We don't want him to be coming prematurely, that's for sure, with that foul trouble. And definitely, for me, it's Pardon, Hump, Sauce, and...
Yep.
Not overused, that one. And finally, guards, fellas. William McDowell White, son of Darryl, BMW. AC here, we've got Antonius Cleveland. It's not the AC in the BMW. Randall and Tucker to finish us off. Bordy, you're yawning so much, mate.
Sorry,
you can
mate.
do it.
I'm still
go for it.
I'm going to go Randall, Tucker, Beamer. Oh, no. Yes. AC last.
Yep.
Wow. I am Tucker, Randall.
Whoa, okay.
AC, and Beamer has an absolute nightmare of a matchup this week.
Yep, Jackies, avoid the Jackies if we can. I think I just got to go Randall a little bit over Tucker, AC, and then Beamer last. But that's how we're sitting with it. And we've got another Captain's podcast to do, Banksy. But Boydie, if you could wrap us up, mate, that would be great.
Beautiful. As always, you can find us on Twitter at @people_blokes, on Facebook, Basketball Blokes, or www.basketballblokes.com, the #1 source of NBL Fantasy information. Ciao.